managing partner for the KPMG Columbus office. We have an outstanding panel today around the theme of investing in your team, and I can tell you every client that I meet with, retention is a top priority. So I'm excited to hear from the three CEOs that we have here today. I think we can all agree that an employee's experience leads to the customer experience, and what a priority that is. So with that, do you want to start with a quick introduction and maybe a landscape of what your workforce looks like at each of your companies?
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone, or good morning. Erhardt Preitauer, so CareSource, we have about 4,500 employees across all of our states. The majority of them are in Ohio. We're based out of Dayton, and our focus is on healthcare, government-sponsored healthcare, Medicare, Medicaid, and Marketplace.
Hi, I'm Mark Smucker. I live in Akron. Our offices are based in Orrville, Ohio, which is in Wayne County. It's about an hour south of Cleveland. I'm the fifth generation of the Smucker family. We are a public company. You would be familiar, of course, with our jams and jellies, but I noticed our Jif peanut butter is in the back, so thank you for that. We make a lot of coffee, Folgers, Dunkin' for grocery stores, Cafe Bustelo, and a lot of pet food and snacks, including Milk-Bone and Meow Mix. Our workforce is spread across the country, a little bit in Canada. We have 19 plants, but are about 7,000 employees, and 2,000 of which, so the largest portion of our workforce, would be located in Northeast Ohio.
Thanks. And Brian Chambers with Owens Corning. We are headquartered in Toledo, Ohio. We're a global building and construction materials company. So we produce glass fibers and a lot of different building materials, insulation, roofing materials. We have about 20,000 employees globally. We operate in 33 countries. And in Ohio here, we got a little over 2,500 employees. Our science and global science and technology centers right outside of Columbus, headquarters in Toledo, 3 other manufacturing facilities here in Ohio. So we founded here and started here, and proud to be a big employer and big supporter here.
Great. So compensation and career advancement have traditionally been the driving factors for employee satisfaction. I'll start with you, Erhardt. Do you think that's still the case?
Well, compensation, career advancement, it's always something that's important, but the data to me is very, very clear. It goes way beyond that now, and I spend a lot of time listening and talking and reading, and all of the social stuff. People have to feel really good about where they're working, who they're working for, what they're doing, and I think the focus really, to me, is around a more holistic perspective. And those of us who focused on that, I think, have seen sort of the data and the success in terms of retention, et cetera. So that's a big focus for us, and it certainly has had a positive impact.
And Mark, do you want to provide your perspective on that as well?
Sure. Yes, I mean, compensation is clearly important, but particularly what we've learned through the pandemic is there's a lot more. From our perspective, we've always focused on a very holistic view of total rewards, and obviously that includes a lot of types of benefits, making sure that we're sort of leading in particularly in our industry, in the CPG industry, with things like parental leave, benefits for some of the different diverse communities. There's a number of different things that we would provide. But I also think what's really important is people want not only career advancement, but they want the opportunity to be coached, and really be ensured that they're going to have the right training, and this whole idea of a continuous improvement mindset where we can offer employees the opportunities to continue to learn, whether that is specific to their job or not, is really important for our people as well.
Yeah. Well, I think we're all finding that competitive pay and compensation, training development, these are becoming table stakes. They're not differentiators. And clearly, we're in an environment where the labor market is such that it's really an employee choice labor market. Employees can choose to go where they want, workers can choose to go where they want. So I think the question we've been asking ourselves, and I think it's a critical one, is how do we become an employer of choice? With that much opportunity, that much selection, and where can we differentiate as a company in terms of creating the environment? So competitive pay is there, training and development's there, but I think we've really been more focused on how we engage, how we inspire, how we empower our colleagues across the globe to really create an environment where they are not just coming for a paycheck. They're coming because they believe in our purpose. They want to work with our colleagues. They believe in the mission of the company. They're inspired by the work they're doing. And so I think it's really back to what you were saying, Aaron, a holistic approach to how we look at the employee experience. And I think it's just really stepped up how we differentiate. And that's a question we ask ourselves each and every day.
Yeah, that's really helpful. I think it is important to look at the total rewards, have those open conversations with our teams. And I know at KPMG we've been on a lot of listening tours with all levels to understand what is important to our people. And we have recently changed some of our compensation structure benefits. So I think that's been very helpful. Thank you. There are so many conversations right now about employees' needs and support. What are the missing or ignored factors that aren't being discussed as much as they should be, and why? Mark, do you want to start with that one?
I think Brian actually just touched on it, which is people really want to work for a company that has a purpose and reflects their values. So just to give you the example of in our own case, our purpose is really around feeding connections. Obviously, we're a food company. Feeding connections that help us thrive is how we describe our purpose. And allowing people to understand that the reason they're coming to work is feeding a greater purpose, giving them opportunities to participate in community activities. Obviously, we pull from Summit, Stark, Wayne, Medina counties a lot, and one of the many institutions that we support is the I Promise School, and we've had multiple instances where we've actually sent dozens, if not more than 100 folks to that school to help participate in its opening and so forth. So just one very, very small example, but if people feel that they are contributing more broadly to society in a number of different ways, that really helps inspire them, to Brian's earlier point.
Yeah. Completely agree. I think one I would add is, while we focus on the employee experience and onboarding and training piece, we've been putting as much effort on the leadership and the leadership experience and training our leaders to be better communicators, to build trust, to engage. And I think a little bit of the missing part of the conversation that we've had to be focused more on is it's not just about attracting and hiring great talent. It's how do you retain them. And the key part, what we see is most people don't leave companies, they leave leaders. And so we've put as much emphasis on frontline supervisors, our first-time people leaders, our senior leaders, in terms of how we are improving and building trust, how we're communicating, how we're engaging. And I think that's just an expectation that our colleagues have around the world of working for people and with people that understand their needs, are flexible, and can engage with them and build trust in a partnership with them.
Yeah, and how would you say your employee mentoring and other cultural aspects have changed, especially now that we're seeing more of a remote work environment around entry level as well as all levels?
Let's go first.
Yeah. I'll talk. So first, if I could back up a little bit, I would share just a couple of data points, which I think maybe brings some context. So for CareSource, 4,500 employees, maybe over 3,000 of them in Ohio. Our turnover rate sort of peaked, got my attention, about the fourth quarter of last year. The first quarter of this year, our retention is better than the first quarter of last year, which I think is a big deal. my CFO gets a little twisted up because it's actually causing a bit of a budget issue, but it's a good thing. It's for a good reason. And we've had over 60 people actually come back to CareSource who left in the second half of last year. So I don't know how that compares to everyone, but through our peer group, that's a pretty solid sort of retention effort. And a lot of the stuff, that we've done sort of goes through that. And the cultural aspects, I mean, leadership is a big deal. I ask my leaders to lead, and we've got to be able to lead personally. And I'll give just one quick example of something that I did. I think behavioral health is very unrecognized out there today amongst our workforce, and that's something that I heard very, very clearly as I sort of went through. And so in January, I got up in front of the entire company and I said, hey, listen, I realized through talking to all of you that I too am impacted. I too have lost my balance in terms of being able to sort of manage all of this and all of the change. And I asked the company to join me on a journey. And we sort of set up a Teams channel. We made a campaign around it. And so I was very personally involved. We got over 1,000 people to sort of sign up on this Teams channel. And you wouldn't believe the conversations that ensued, the things that people were open to talking about on their wellness challenge that they said they were never comfortable talking about. That level of engagement, I think, is one of the many things that we've done that I think kept people sort of, their hearts and their minds in CareSource and a part of our organization.
Yeah, I think that as a leader, the personal vulnerability is really important because it allows people to relate to you. And even back to the question just around mentorship, I think as mentors, whether we're mentoring one individual or multiple individuals, being able to authentically show a level of personal vulnerability allows employees to connect with us as leaders. I think one of the challenges that we have had with mentorship is the remote, right? The remote environment. And we're still learning. As a company, we've been trying to be very thoughtful about how we have brought people back to campus. We have a very large campus with a daycare and a fitness center and a clinic and whatnot because it is rural. And so we provide a lot of amenities, but with people being remote, it's hard to truly mentor folks. And so, we've taken an approach where we've identified a dozen weeks of the year where we want people to be on campus, and the rest it's more flexible. But when we have started to lose, we've had turnover of employees that want to go 100% remote, in our opinion, the ones that suffer the most are the younger, newer employees that aren't getting face-to-face exposure with managers. And so we've had, we're only a few months into this new hybrid work model, and it seems to be working relatively well. But where we have had success convincing some of the newer and younger employees to stay is specifically around this point, where you would have a 27-year-old individual, a woman say, I'm going to go take this job that's 100% remote. And our managers have sat down with a couple of folks like that and said, hey, look, if you do that, think about your career. What are you going to be missing? What hallway conversations are you not going to be able to have? What meetings will you not be able to observe the body language of leaders and so forth and so on? And actually had a handful of instances where those individuals who may have been getting more money in their potentially new role chose to stay because they recognized that they needed that career development.
I think where we've been kind of on a journey, I think, along mentorship to sponsorship. And what we have found is a lot of the mentorship relationships that we either assigned or created were a lot more transactional. And so they were effective in terms of maybe in onboarding or somebody new in terms of building the network and showing, but they weren't building a connection. And we've moved more towards sponsorship. And this was an issue when we first talked about sponsorship among our leaders, among our VPs, because the assumption was if I'm sponsoring somebody, I'm going to sponsor them to promotions and different roles, and I need to speak for their successes, and I may not know them, and there's a lot of around the word sponsorship, and until we got grounded on sponsorship, what you're sponsoring in an individual is their success, whatever that is. We're not sponsoring them necessarily for a promotion. We're not necessarily sponsoring somebody for a big role somewhere. You're sponsoring their success. How do you help make sure they're successful inside the company? Engagement, personal relationships, navigating networks, benefits, whatever that is. And I think that's created a stronger link to those that we've been moving down this journey. And we still have mentorship. There's a role there, but I think we really look for deep engagement through sponsorship, and that's been something that's been really helpful. I think on the question of the remote work, so I always remind our colleagues that 85% of our company and our colleagues get up every day and come to work, and they've been doing that through the pandemic because they're working in our manufacturing facilities. So about 15% of our workforce has the opportunity to be remote and working that. And so we did a survey around flexibility recently, and interestingly enough, the ones that wanted to be back in the office more were folks that were hired less than 5 years, because they wanted to build that network and connection and relationship. And the ones that were more seasoned in terms of the company and the operation wanted the most flexibility. It was very eye-opening, because we thought the younger workers and growing up remotely and on iPads and phones and social, that they would be really comfortable, and they are. But they also crave that connection and collaboration. So I think we've been really focused then on how we tie sponsorship, mentorship, in-person meetings, and starting to bring that collaboration back in. And we're on a journey, like everybody, trying to figure this out in terms of how you give the balance of flexibility with that in-person connection and collaboration, which I think is so important back to engagement and retention, because people need to feel like they're part of something bigger than just coming in to do a certain job, and it's tough to do that remotely.
Yep, I agree. What we're seeing in our office in Columbus, we actually, for KPMG, have one of the higher utilization rates in the office, and some of the other offices are asking me what we're doing different, and the only thing that I can point to is that what I'm finding is the more people that come in, the more people want to come in, because when they come in, they want it to be meaningful engagement. So we are not mandating that anyone comes to the office a certain number of days or anything like that. It's really hard in our business to do that, because you're traveling around between client sites and the KPMG office. But we've had a couple groups within our office that have really driven coming in certain days of the week, and then that attracts more. So we're trying to do things that really engage them when they are in the office versus telling them they have to be. But I really think that feeds into your point, Mark, about setting certain weeks of the year where everyone is there, because that is what they are craving. And I think once our younger professionals experience that, it will attract them to come to the office and interact with colleagues and clients more.
This is one of them, and I'm not there. So they're
What's that?
probably like, where's Mark this week?
Let's shift to, we've talked this morning about upskilling and workforce development, particularly in industries that are being reinvented and transformed by technologies. So any advice on how companies should transform or think about this new reality?
Just a quick example, I guess. Our administration here in Ohio, they got a tech cred certification sort of approach. And we've had just tremendous success taking kids out of high school in underserved areas, getting them like a quality analyst certification. There's 2 or 3 of them. And then hiring them at CareSource and seeing them, some of them just absolutely excel. And it's just been heartwarming to sort of see. Some of these kids just needed an opportunity, just needed sort of a platform to sort of move forward with. So we're at a run rate, probably 20 to 30 kids a year that we sort of put through these programs, and that's just been tremendous. I think, with the conversation that we had before this, obviously we're all thinking about how do we do our part to continue to sort of cultivate and grow workforce here in Ohio. So just an example to share.
Yeah, I think it's a struggle, particularly for us in our manufacturing operations, because the nature of manufacturing has just changed more towards automated digital systems, advanced manufacturing, advanced process controls, and so the ability to find and develop people that can come in without those skills and bring them in and give them a career is something that's really important. One thing we've done with probably the best success, I would say, is within each one of our manufacturing locations, we have partnered with local tech colleges, community colleges around curriculums, sponsoring, hiring people in that we will send them back and get their 2-year degrees or their tech degrees. Sometimes it's a 9-month certification. So I think we've been very flexible with how we can partner with local tech community leaders or universities or schools, trade schools, to build that capability. And I think we've just taken the approach. We're not going to hire somebody that can come in day one and do what we need them. We just want to hire somebody that is willing to learn and develop and grow the career, and then we will train and develop them. But those local partnerships around our manufacturing facilities, so it's a local community effort, has really been successful for us.
Yeah, I guess I would maybe give an example of something a little bit, maybe a little less formal that we've done, where we've tried to inspire our teams how to better answer business questions. So a couple years ago, maybe 3 or 4 years ago, we started embedding IT people into business teams. So embedding IT people, for example, data and analytics folks into, say, a marketing function. And what that allowed them to do was to help the business people in marketing answer questions that they never thought they could answer through technology, where they were doing way too much analysis, spending a half a day on a problem, and these IT folks were able to create apps or new code or whatever that would actually allow for marketers to answer business questions instantaneously. And over time, what that led to is this just a more broad embracing of some of these technologies. It led to us developing a proprietary system where we could actually go to grocery stores or see virtually where we had very specific out of stocks or outages on shelf, and actually direct our salespeople to those store clusters, if you will, to basically get our products back on shelf so we're not losing sales. And it was so successful in that particular case because we actually piloted it with Kroger in Cincinnati, that Kroger came to us and said, can you help us think about how we might embed this into some of their systems. So it's that finding new ways for different teams to collaborate together has opened some doors that we did not foresee.
Great. So in thinking about teaming together as Ohio leadership, any call to actions for this group that the business community should be focused on based on your experience in attracting, retaining, and developing talent?
Oh, go ahead.
One thing comes to mind. Obviously, we're all very, very excited about the impact that Intel and all the related companies are going to have. But the way I see it is, if I don't figure out how to install a great framework to drive retention in our organization, we're going to lose a lot of folks. And so I think for me right now, and again, I shared a couple data points early. I think we've got a good start. I know a lot of you do as well. But that's something we're going to continue to focus on so that we can be supportive as Ohio continues to grow and change, and that we don't lose our workforce. And, obviously people can work remotely and use digitally and all these different things. So I think the challenges around retention and building that framework to be able to hold and grow people, it's not the end, it's the beginning for us.
Yeah, I think maybe the two, I would say one, I think I probably led with. I think it's what are we doing every day, what are you doing every day to be an employer of choice. I just think having that frame of every aspect to create a great work experience is so important. And then I think the second one goes to, when you look at your calendar, how much of your time is being dedicated towards talent, whether it's meeting with colleagues, new folks in the company, communications, town halls, small group listening sessions. I would share with you, when I actually pen out my calendar, it is a significant amount of my time more this year so far than I would say the last couple of years. And I think that's going to be critical, because I think this has got to be leader-led. I think in terms of the ability to connect, engage, create an environment where everybody wants to stay and work and grow. So I think it's the second call to action would be look at your calendar, look at how you're spending your time, and is it appropriate to the challenge that I think, because I think we've talked about this. I think the biggest challenge all of us are facing is, can we attract, develop, and retain enough talent to drive our growth agendas, to drive our business agendas. And so I completely agree with you, Erhardt. I think step one is don't lose people. So it's how are you investing to develop once they come into the company, how are you embracing them and making sure they never want to go anywhere else. And that takes a lot of time and a lot of personal involvement, but it's the payoff is enormous.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think I tell my folks that they should be spending about 50% of their time on talent, because that is how we retain. And I think the only thing that I would layer on is just making progress, at least speaking for our own case, in inclusion and diversity. And we've made tremendous progress on gender equality, pay equity from a gender perspective. And I think we as a company need to do better from a diversity perspective, whether that's racial diversity or what have you. And it does start with inclusive thought. And so trying to make sure that we are embracing a variety of different thought and being intentional about how we're recruiting talent and making sure that our diverse talent, in whatever form that takes, is truly feeling included.
Yeah, completely agree. I mean, we focus enormous amounts of time on building a culture of appreciation and belonging around
Right.
I&D. And to me, it is a business imperative. It's not just the right thing to do. It is needed to drive the results. And as a global company, I mean, we face into that, and we start with, do we have an inclusive environment? Do people feel valued when they come in? And if you get that right, then the diversity is going to occur. And so we really focus on inclusion in the broadest sense, of people feeling valued. And I think that's just mission critical to driving business results, to have that in place.
Yeah, absolutely. We recently piloted a new business resource group in certain offices for KPMG. It's an interfaith business resource group. And I will tell you, I lead the Columbus one. It is a challenging BRG to lead, but it has been, I feel like it's really built connection and awareness around sharing different perspectives of different religions around different holidays. So it is, I think, going back to the point of being vulnerable as a leader, but we're still piloting it. We'll see if we're going to roll it out more broadly. But no, that's just one thing that came to mind.
But I would
yeah.
add, I think that really, affinity groups, I think, build a backbone of belonging and engagement and appreciation and understanding. We've now doubled the amount of affinity groups inside Owens Corning over the last 3 years. We've got now 10. And they're led by a group of people that want to do this. They want to build an understanding around a certain culture or a certain religious belief or a certain position. And we've added veterans now. We've added employees with disabilities, a variety of ethnic affinity groups. But they have created not just a draw for those that affiliate with them, but for everyone around that wants to build an understanding. And it's a place where you can go be vulnerable to understand what it's like to step in somebody else's shoes. And I think that's just been a great backbone around that culture of appreciation and belonging that is so needed.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Do you mind if I
Sure.
ask a question?
Go ahead.
How many people feel like they have really well-developed employee resource groups? I'm just curious for my own, or the majority? Sheepish a little bit. I actually think back to the thing, I'll make one comment too. So we've worked on ours really well, and it has tremendous engagement and popularity. I watch the numbers very closely. Also something that we use in recruiting, quite frankly, because now the newer recruits, they want to understand how committed leadership is in the company. And we're trying to challenge our folks to move it. I don't want our employee resource groups to be looked at as an HR thing. I'd like it to move into actually being a part of the fabric of our organization. And part of how I see it is for leadership, for people to be their best selves, they've got to be able to be authentic. They've got to be able to come to work and feel like they can be themselves in a culture that sort of values diversity, inclusion, equity, is a company that is going to be able to get the best out of everyone. And I think that's a really important element, consistent with what you guys are talking about in today's environment.
Yeah, one thing we haven't touched on too much is employee burnout. So with the remote work environment or hybrid, we were hearing that a lot because your home is now your office and it's all intermingled and it's very easy to work a lot in this environment. So a couple of things we've done, we have, or I've heard other companies doing as well, is some ideas, no meeting Fridays so that you can focus on getting your work done going into the weekend. We do have a mandatory shutdown at KPMG the week of July 4th. And at first, when we launched that, we do give a lot of paid time off. And so I thought, why can't people just take the week off? But what we found is the decrease in the number of internal emails and just that you really are able to disengage and refresh. And that has been really important for our people during this time. So any other ideas or things you have done to address
I
the
think
burnout?
it starts with modeling it as a leader, because in a large organization, what you find is depending on the leader of various functions, some people are more old school versus new school and so forth. And so not that just because the CEO does it doesn't mean everybody will, but I think it does start at the top. I think it does start by not sending emails in the evening or not responding to emails, maybe on the weekend. I even with my own leadership team, I've tried to model that when they are away or off, I don't call them. I don't, and if you do that enough, it starts to cascade. And obviously, there are a lot more formal ways to do that. Obviously, conversations need to be had, but I do think it starts by modeling it at the top.
Agree. Yeah.
I would agree. I think part of the burnout has been when everybody went remote that could work remote, when the distance between your work life and your family life is 15 feet, it's really tough to disconnect. And I truly believe most people are really committed and they are going to continue to work to get the job done and respond. But, similar to Mark, one of the things I would say I do and have done since that is I, like most of us, probably do work weekends and do catch up on a lot of things. But I have stopped sending emails out. So I will work offline. I'll stack them all up, but they'll wait for Monday morning because I found that even if I put in the email, you don't have to reply to this or do anything to this till Monday. I still get a reply back like an hour and a half later. And so it's just, I think those little behaviors. The other thing we've done with our global teams is we were very Toledo, Ohio-centric in our time zones. So our teams would schedule calls and not really appreciate what time it was in Europe or India or Japan or China. And so we have, as a leadership team, committed that all of our calls internationally are on their time zone. And that means weekends and nights for us at times, but we're able to do that and balance that a little bit more. And it's amazing how that one action has just reverberated through the whole company of appreciation of people's time, respecting the time on the weekends, the time at nights in a way that I would have never thought, even with our U.S. colleagues that are aware of that in terms of our global business. So I think leader-led, and what are the little things you can do? It's amazing how that ripples through the organization in terms of just showing respect for people's time and ability to take some time off.
Absolutely. Yep, good examples. Yeah, so anything I didn't ask that you guys are thinking you wanted to share with the group as as parting words today?
Well, I think one of the things we talked about before was just how do you measure the success of all this work? I tend to be very pragmatic in terms of, to me, I look at two numbers, and that's our engagement rates as a leading indicator with the surveys we do, and then I look at retention rates. And if the retention rates are strong and our turnover rates are low, then we are doing well. And we look at that by location, by geography, and that's where we've really been able to, where we see those rates trending up. We tend to look inside the leader, the environment, how are we engaging our teams, and we try to be very quick in terms of correcting any issues we find there. But I think those are a couple of indicators, engagement rates, turnover rates, that we watch very, very closely, because at the end of the day, that's why we're doing this in terms of improving the retention.
Outcomes, I mean, CareSource, we've got a couple of partners in the room, so I want to be careful about what I'm saying here. Our 4 or 5 key metrics for us around quality or member satisfaction. We serve about a little over 2 million members, and proud to say at this point, many of our sort of core statistics are among the best in the country. So I think obviously turnover rate lower, higher engagement, but then there's the results in terms of our output as an organization that that in my mind say, well, we're at least pointed in the right direction. We're doing something right. But again, from my view, it's just the beginning. I mean, we got a lot of work ahead to sort of continue to sort of keep our arms around everyone.
I agree with everything that's been said. I think, I'm not sure which of you guys said it at the beginning, but this whole concept of inspiration, it's hard to measure, but to the extent that as we are together physically and we can inspire each other, whether it's the work that we're doing as a company, as individuals, in our own personal lives, I think when people feel that they are inspired, that they will remain engaged. And so in order to measure that, it does require a lot of listening. Obviously, surveys are one tool, but trying to keep people inspired is really important to overall engagement.
I think about this, some don't love the term human capital management, but in my mind it gives the right prominence to thinking about it that way, and making the right investments in our people and continuing to invest and just stay very focused on our people. So in closing, I would just say I commend all the leaders in the room, because the last couple of years have been extremely challenging and we are all learning as we go. So I really appreciate those that I talked to last night and just sharing ideas and experiences, and think it would be great if we continue to do that, because I'm sure there are more surprises ahead. So thank you for your time this morning, and we will close with that. And the next panel will start shortly.